What statistically improbable thing happened to you? Story 1. Took a summertime organic chemistry class. 1 month of classes, 5 days a week. Then a 3-week break, then another month for the second semester. After the break, I reached into the box in my closet to grab the textbook where I had hidden it, and felt a sharp stab in the corner of my little finger at the cuticle of the nail bed. I was running late to class, so I thought nothing of it. I became ill with profuse sweating and nausea during the day, then violently ill into the night with vomiting and diarrhea and swollen adenoids. Went to the ER the next morning, and they ran every test they could. 2 days later, I started having trouble breathing and went to the ER again. My heart was swollen up half again to its normal size, my lungs were swollen, and my kidneys too. Doctors kept me for 2 days with batteries of tests, and after 2 days let me go as everything was going back to normal. Then I began pooping what appeared to be a white paste, and this went on for 2 days. At the end of which I noticed that my tongue and the lining of my mouth was almost purple in color, and I had a red streak from the tip of my little finger that during the day extended up to my bicep by that evening. Went back to the ER, and the doctor said he had no clue, but maybe I had been bitten by something venomous. I then thought about the day that the symptoms started and went to that box in my closet, and sure enough, there was a little black spider in the box. I asked one of my professors about it, and he told me the county health department had an entomology office not far from campus, so I captured the little spider and went on over. The doctor there told me it was just a grass spider, and there was absolutely no way it could have envenomated me for 3 reasons. He said they have curved mandibles, so they can't hit the human skin. They have soft mandibles, so even when they manage to strike the skin, the mandible will turn and not break the surface. But most importantly, their venom, which digests the protein that's stretched between the cell walls of animals, gets bound to platelets in the human bloodstream and is almost instantly neutralized. I showed him where the bite was, as evidenced by the red streak, and sure enough, it was in the corner of the nail bed in very soft tissue of the cuticle where the spider could actually get a strike. He asked if I had some kind of platelet disorder. I made a quick call to the cancer research hospital I worked at in the evenings at the time, and sure enough, I had donated platelets the evening before being bitten. A process where they put you on a platelet apheresis machine and extract almost all of your platelets for donation to kids who are in need of them due to having low counts from the chemotherapy. It was at this point that the entomologist started hyperventilating and asking all kinds of questions. He was low-key freaking out. He kept repeating that this was a billion to 1 event, and he'd never heard of it before. He ended up getting me to sign some papers so he could have my medical records and published a paper on it. Fun for him, but not so much for me. The white paste that I pooped for 3 days was the epithelial lining of my entire digestive tract, which came out as white, pasty-looking individual cells. By the end of the month, everything was back to normal like none of it had ever happened. Interesting side note, when some spiders inject their victims and turn them into liquid that they can then drink, this venom dissolves the proteins that hold cells together by running between the cell walls. These proteins are the only thing binding the cells together. Without these proteins, we would be reduced to a nasty, white, almost liquidy paste. Edit. As it has been asked many times in the comments, I do not possess a copy or link to the paper the entomologist wrote, nor do I remember which journal it was in. This happened in the early 90s and may have never even been out in the internet. Also, I don't know if that journal even still exists. Can't be that many people reading journals on entomology. Also, he was a PhD in entomology and not a medical doctor, so it wasn't in a medical journal. This is probably the wildest story in the whole thread. My goodness. Glad you recovered pretty quickly, all things considered. And I made an A in that semester, too. I had a lot of bedtime to read while I was down. On the negative side, though I am now mortally afraid of spiders as I was sent to the ER 3 times and almost perished due to one of the most harmless spiders there is. I think I've had an experience like that where I've reached into a drawer or something and felt a sharp pain in my finger or something, but I've never really thought to look at what exactly it was. I was usually thinking it was maybe a nail that where the drawer hadn't been assembled properly, but this is going to make me look into the drawer every time and make sure of what hit my nail. Story 2. Back in community college, people thought I was unalive for half a day. I was supposed to meet a friend on campus and go eat. I was running late because my dad wanted me to do something before I left. I don't remember what. I get to campus and there's this fountain that the kind you can walk through or run about and avoid sprays of water. Around the whole fountain is a bunch of police tape. So I kind of think, okay, weird. Then I go to the building where my friends hang out. As I walk in behind one of them, I hear them telling everyone else I unalived myself that morning. Turns out that a guy matching my physical description unalived himself in the fountain. Between that and what he'd said to someone before doing it, along with my appalling lack of punctuality, everyone thought it was me. I always thought the Mark Twain quote of, "The reports of my death are greatly exaggerated," was just awesome, but I had never thought I'd have the opportunity to use it. What was their reaction when they saw you? A couple of hugs, sighs of relief, one going, "Oh, hell," and running off. Seems they told the school paper it was me. The cops did proper ID fingerprints and everything, so I never heard anything beyond my immediate group of friends. I know my fingerprints are on file, so I'm not super worried about others being identified as me. Before people ask, I was fingerprinted as part of a kidnap kit. They fingerprinted me, included a picture, and laminated it. I grew up as a latchkey kid in the times of ID necklaces and bracelets. I still have my early 90s safety child laminated card with fingerprints, photo, and physical description that my mom had made for me at the mall when I was 6. I carry it in my wallet, so just in case I'm ever kidnapped, my abductor can marvel at how cute I used to be. Edit. Can marvel, not can have marvel. Although now that I'm typing it, it seems kind of legit. Have all the marvel you want. This sort of happened to me when I was about 15 or 16. I got a call from one of my friends on the East Coast. I was on the West Coast for summers with my dad, and she told me there was a bunch of people that thought I was gone. I never got the reason why. My high school senior class thought I was unalive. They were setting up a little memorial for me at the reunion a few years ago. I only found out because a friend of mine from high school found my Facebook profile and was like, "No way." Turns out my estranged sibling told everyone in my old hometown that I was unalived. This happened to me once. I had a relative call me and then say, "What happened? Are you okay?" To which I was confused, and he pointed me to an article in the paper about some accident that happened on the freeway. A car crashed, and among the people that were unalived in that was someone that had my exact name, first name and last name. Very surreal. Story 3. Husband and I visited our old hometown and went to a used bookstore we used to frequent. I picked up a familiar little title in nostalgia and flipped it open to find a school student's ID card. The name and photo on the ID? My husband. Turns out his mom had donated books to that store many years before we all moved away from that area. He must have been using it as a bookmark and forgotten. It's not so surprising considering we used to live in that area, but the ID was nearly 10 years old by the time we found it. That book was sitting on the shelf for nearly a decade untouched, waiting for me to come along and pick it up. Bizarre. A friend of mine, A, had a signed copy of a book from his favorite author. While he was at university, his mother asked him if she could donate his books, and he said okay. He had forgotten that the book was in his room. He thought he had it with him at school. When he realized his mistake, the book was long gone. More than 20 years later, another friend, B, was in Japan. He was in a cafe that had a book exchange. He picked up a book that had an inscription. It was dedicated to someone with the same first name as our friend who had lost his inscribed book. B decided to buy it for A, not knowing that A had lost an inscribed book from the now unalive author. B sent the book to A in the U.S. A was quite surprised to get a package from B, who he hadn't heard from in years. He was even more surprised when it was the exact same book his mother had donated. It was still in pretty good condition, and even had notes in his handwriting in the margins that he didn't remember making. This reminded me of when we moved out of our family home that my parents had lived in for about 25 years. We'd already moved out, and the new owners had moved in, but about a week later, my mom remembered that she'd left some old photo albums in the attic. She obviously went back to collect them, and when we were looking through them, she realized that a young boy and a few photos of family friends was actually the new owner of our old home. I still find it funny that before moving any of his possessions into his new home, there were already photographs of this man as a child in his house. Okay, that one's freaky. I'm trying to remember of something where if I've lost something, I've ever come across it like years later just by accident. And aside from someone storing it for generations to have it spring up on me as a surprise, I don't remember anything like that. Has anything like that happened to you? Story 4. After losing an AirPod while skiing, I was able to find it for the next run. I lost an earring diving in a deep mountain creek. I paddled in the water over where it fell out, and I shouted, "Watch this!" to my girlfriend, and dove down 10 feet to the bottom and blindly grabbed a bunch of tiny river rocks in my fist and swam to the surface and held my fist high triumphantly. I swam to the bank to my girlfriend and opened my hand, and it was there with the river rocks. I did something similar. My mother called me at home and told me she had lost the diamond on her ring while swimming laps and to please come and help look for it. By the time I got there, a lifeguard was putting on scuba gear to scour the bottom of the pool. I walked along the edge of the pool looking along the bottom until I saw something sparkly flashing off the bottom 10 feet down. Dove off of the side and picked up the diamond. All done in about 45 seconds from the time I set my towel down when I arrived. Swimming at the beach with a friend. He loses his sunglasses in the water. We were far out and we looked for them but couldn't find them. We left to grab lunch for a couple of hours. Came back to the same spot to swim again. Not even 10 minutes later, I touched something with my toe. Reached down and grabbed the item. It was the lost sunglasses. Friend lost her Cartier ring in the waves and in about 4 feet of water. I thought for sure it was gone. Somehow, after about 5 minutes of searching, felt like 30, her boyfriend picks up a handful of sand, and there's the ring. He told her she's not allowed to wear it in the water anymore. She agreed. I went to the beach just this last weekend. I choose to leave my rings at home. Story 5. Not an exciting life or not life incident, but something rather sweet. I took care of my late father for the final 2 years of his life. He had Alzheimer's and pulmonary fibrosis, among other issues, so we had a lot more bad days than good. In the summer of 2019, I took my dad out for a date one day to a historic old drugstore that had phenomenal milkshakes, one of his favorite foods in the world. It was one of Dad's increasingly rare good days, where he chatted merrily with me about all sorts of old memories. I felt like I had my dad's former self back for just a little while. We had such a wonderful time that I intended to take him there again soon. However, this ended up being our last date. For most of the remainder of that year, Dad declined too much, mentally and physically, for me to take him out for anything other than very short grocery trips or to appointments. The following year, Enter the pandemic. It was a very, very rough year with Dad. In January of 2021, my father passed away, alone, in a hospital in another state. Our state ran out of hospital beds, and he had suffered a traumatic fall that required hospitalization. That day in 2019 ended up being the last truly happy day I had with my dad, and the last fun outing he ever got to experience. 3 months after my dad passed away, I met a wonderful man online. 9 days after signing up for a 1-year membership because surely it's going to take time to find someone truly compatible with a shy nerd like me. A few months later, we decided to try a first date. He lived 3 hours away, but wanted me to be comfortable, so he volunteered to drive to my town for the date. He looked online for an appealing restaurant to suggest, and excitedly told me about this really neat historic drugstore we could go to. We went on a very crowded day, local festival, and had to wait quite a while for a table. The waitress sat us at the exact same table where I sat with my dad nearly 2 years earlier. I was even in the same seat. 3 months later, we got engaged at that drugstore. So the beginning of the end of one chapter of my life crossed paths with the beginning of the best, so far, chapters. My husband and I have since decided to make a trip back there at least once a year. Dad really would have loved my husband. Story 6. Not me, but a friend. He was a merchant mariner. I live here in Virginia Beach. He was always calling and texting, posting pics from around the world. One time, he'd been out a while. We knew he was heading to Dubai, but didn't know where he'd be after that. 4 months go by. Nobody's heard from him. His neighbor, who I was friends with, gets married and goes to Thailand for his honeymoon. He texted me one day and said, "You aren't gonna believe this stuff." He said he asked a local where a good local spot to eat was that tourists wouldn't be at. Guy takes him 30 minutes from the beach to some dive bar/restaurant with no sign, no clearly marked entrance. He said it looked so shady he was afraid he was about to be robbed and unalived. He goes in, and it's a legitimate restaurant. He eats, drinks some beers, and goes to the bathroom. Out walks my friend, so he took a pic and sent it to me to confirm he's okay. Imagine taking a flight several thousands of miles away, getting away from the tourist areas and going into a local dive bar and running into your totally next-door neighbor you haven't seen in months. That's wild. A friend of mine, American, was visiting New Zealand. She wasn't in a big city, a random small town that I've never heard of and probably couldn't even pronounce. She went to a hole-in-the-wall restaurant and was seated at a table directly next to her ex, who she hadn't seen or talked to in several years. She said they never discussed visiting New Zealand, and she just went on a whim with a friend. I was once in a cafe in a small but touristy town in New Zealand with someone visiting from the UK, and she ran into a work colleague too. My other story is meeting a girl in Prague, and then about a year later, meeting a girl in northern France. When I became Facebook friends with the second one, I realized the first one was a mutual friend. Turns out they went to school together in the UK. I'm from New Zealand. Not quite as out there, but still pretty random. Something like this is really totally crazy sometimes. I mean, 1 hour difference would have probably been enough for them to miss each other. As I think about it, I wonder how many more occasions like this must have happened where the timing was not right. You only think about the occasions where stuff like this happened. Just imagine how many more occasions like this almost happened. My brain melts. An infinite amount of circumstances took place due to the right place at the right time. Your very existence is the result of billions of years and millions or billions of events happening in a way that allows you to live. That reminds me of the old joke comedians use to talk back to hecklers. Out of all the sperm on their way to your mom's egg, you were the winner? Story 7. Riding my bicycle on a commercial fishing pier as a kid, I lost control and rode off the edge with a 20-foot drop to exposed rocks at low tide. I tried to stop myself going over by planting my feet on the edge of the pier, but I knew my bike was too heavy. Somehow, the bike stopped halfway over at a 45-degree angle. However, now the seat was in the small of my back, preventing me from getting off, and I couldn't budge it at all to get the bike back up. A fisherman finally ran over to help me, and we decided he would pull me as hard as he could, and I'd let the bike fall. I jumped to the side as he pulled me back to the pier, and it worked. However, my bike was still there. not moving at all. When I examined what had happened, there was a piece of rebar sticking out from the edge of the pier, bent upwards in an L shape, and it passed diagonally through the spokes of my front tire and completely wedged my bike in place. It was the only spot on the 300-foot-long pier with anything sticking out. I most certainly did not stop myself and my bike from going over. Dude, damn. No, they said it was a pier. So not only could you have gone over the edge, you could have also been impaled by the rebar? True, I'd never thought of that. So basically, one potential perishing prevented you from facing another potential perishing. Insane. Story 8. I underwent a surgical procedure called a stapedectomy to improve the significant hearing loss in my good ear. Instead, I ended up completely deaf. My surgical ENT said this has only happened to 5 patients in the U.S. He was doing research to try to help me afterwards. I don't know how true it is, but hey, lucky me. My dad had his retinas spontaneously detaching. One popped off completely, and the other was in the process. The surgeon told him not to worry because 100% of all his retina reattachments had been successful. The one that was in the process of detaching was fine, but after like 3 or 4 surgeries of the one that came off all the way, it kept popping back off, and then the surgeon was just like, sorry, bro. Retinas can detach for no reason? It can go spontaneously if you have bad myopia that keeps getting worse. I think someone online explained to me it's like your eye keeps moving into like more of a football-like shape, and then it can just go boing. Luckily, I'm closing in on my dad's age for when that happened to him, and my eyesight is worse than his was, so... Same happened to my dad. You are right, it happens to nearsighted people because the shape of your eyes is oval like an American football. And when you age, the retina has trouble adjusting to that shape, and if a small hole or rupture is formed, then the liquid in your eye starts seeping through the back of the retina and eventually leads to full collapse. Don't lift heavy, and don't hold in your sneezes or do anything to increase the pressure of your eyes. And be wary of any flashes or visual events, and get to the ER ASAP. That's about what you can do. When they repair the retina, they drain the liquid and use a laser to attach the retina, and then fill it with gas to put pressure and let it heal. I don't remember the full process because this was like 10 years ago, but it's quite amazing what they can do. Story 9. Many years ago, I had a terrible day where my then-girlfriend broke up with me. Then I did terribly in a final exam for a college class. Then I lost my wallet. And finally, as I was doing the Charlie Brown sad walk back home, some random branch broke off a tree as I was walking on the sidewalk underneath it, and the damn thing fell on top of me and hit me square across the shoulder and knocked me to the ground. I just burst out laughing because it was so ridiculous. This triggered an old memory from my uni days. I woke up one morning and a series of small things went wrong. Think spills, broken dishes, burned clothes while ironing, corrupted assignment file on my laptop, that sort of thing. One after the other all morning. As I was leaving my hall of residence to head to my first class, I tripped and fell on the stairs. That was the last straw. I turned around, went back to my room, got back into bed, and stayed there for the rest of that bad luck day. Cue Indian music. When you have a bad day, give up. Go home and sleep. Curse it. Try again tomorrow. Not every bad day can become a good day. Some days are cursed and cannot be uncursed. When you have a bad day that is cursed beyond repair, that is the universe speaking to you, sending you a message. Listen to the universe. Go home. Save your energy. Tomorrow is another day. For now, just totally chill. Story 10. Lost my house in civil court. Represented myself and won in the appeals court twice. Since my case was unique in this state, my cases were published both times. Moving back into my old house soon. Edit. Sorry for the late response. Online suspended me for 3 days for spamming the case links via private message, so I've decided to put the links here. Yeah, the links are here in my script, but no, I'm not reading those. Maybe the captioner or put them up on the screen so you can see them for yourself. Edit 2. Please stop offering me money. Just be a good person to your family and stand up to crooked lawyers in courts. Where can I read more about your case? Also, congratulations. Story 11. As a CPS worker, The investigation supervisors were all having affairs, and one strangled the new hire in the office. Our judge got a DUI. Even HR was sleeping with the office manager. Hi, I'm a rep from Netflix. Could you tell me that story again? Maybe over the course of 3 to 5 seasons? One season that ends on a cliffhanger, and then canceled after one season, even though it was loved and pretty good? Story 12. My friend had 2 sets of monochorionic monoamniotic twins, the rarest kind of twins, in back-to-back pregnancies. Identical twins that share the same amniotic sac and same placenta. Mono-mono or momo twins happen in about 1% of identical twin pregnancies and less than 0.1% of all pregnancies. Story 13. I was on a road trip with my cousins in the 80s. One of them kept playing the same song over and over by rewinding the tape and playing it again. The song was Another One Bites the Dust. After 3 plays in a row, the driver pulls out the tape, says, "Enough," and turned on the radio. Sure enough, that song was playing on the radio right then. Back when I was in middle school, I had my phone ringtone set to the chorus of Have You Ever Seen the Rain by CCR. My dad drove me to my friend's house to pick him up, and I called him to let him know we were close. The classic rock radio station was playing Have You Ever Seen the Rain on the radio. My friend called back, and my phone and the radio were perfectly in sync to the same song. Would never have known it was ringing if it didn't also vibrate and light up. That's when you just throw up your hands and let the car swerve into a ditch. Story 14. First got cancer in 1993. In 2003, they told me to get my affairs in order. I had 6 months. In 2021, they told me it spread to my bones and lungs. They gave me 5 years. In 2023, 2 years down, and I'm feeling about 90%. Curse 'em. Just keep living out of spite. 30 years and counting. Deity, damn, you're my hero today. It seemed like a bad thing, you getting cancer. Think about how cancer feels getting you. Keep trucking, you tough mofo. Story 15. Got attacked by a robin in the morning, then attacked by a hawk 3 hours later. Weird day. Never trying that Worms a Million body wash again. Edit. And now this is in my top 20 posts of all time. Deity, damn it. Oh, I had a similar thing happen to me. I got bit by a bull ant and then stung by a beer. It says beer in my script, and I think that's B because I don't think you can get stung by a bear. Moving on. All on the same bushwalk. To make matters even worse, I went for a surf and cut my foot before I got in the water. I literally just walked back to my car. I was not going to get eaten by a shark that day. Edit. My first big comment. This next beer is for you guys. Story 16. I was almost unalived in a case of mistaken identity. A guy came chasing after my car on the highway, waving his gun out the window. He eventually got in front of me, blocking my car, and stopped his car and got out. He came right up to my window, pointed the gun right at my head, looked me in the eyes, and said, "Sorry, wrong chick," then got back in his car and drove away. I still have no idea who he was or who the right chick was. When you see somebody approaching your car with a weapon, run them over. You can do all the legal stuff later. Run them the hell over. Stay alive.
Please leave your story in the comments. I would love to make a video on them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.